Welcome to Universal God Message of Peace, and I'm Lee Weissman, and this is Dr. Zahir and Dr. Lali Tunjer, and we are here talking today about atheism. Is it the problem? And last week, uh, Dr. Zahir was not here, and so I held forth all on my own on the topic, and hopefully Dr. Zahir has watched at least part of that, and now he gets a chance to share his perspective, and so I get to sit back and to listen happily. So I pass it over to you, Dr. Zahir.
Thank you very much. Yes, I went through the very interesting uh, discussion that you both had on atheism. I really enjoyed it, and it was something that made me think. And I will make my comments on some of the things that you discussed. I do remember Rabbi Wiseman saying that this particular question is going to be answered by me. So let's see. The first thing that I would want to mention regarding atheism, of course, the title is "What is Atheism?" We already know what it is. Some people choose to believe that there is no God. Uh, the first thing that comes to my mind is how could people be atheists? Um, because it is indeed a very difficult conclusion to draw that you know there is no God. My understanding is, and I do remember that uh, this some part of this answer has already been discussed. You see, when we are talking about certain beliefs, uh, and obviously when we talk about beliefs, they happen to be in the domain of the unseen, and they are to be understood through whatever evidences are there to accept them. Uh, and a person can choose not to believe. So if an individual or a group of people have made their choice that they are not interested, then there's no way, no amount of arguments can make them believe. Obviously, the important question is, why do people not want to believe in God? Why do they choose to be atheist? And I do agree with the remarks that were made in the last discussion by Rabbi Wiseman. Uh, it has partly to do with the performance of us religious people. Um, you know, if this world can be, um, its uh, problems can be overcome, if people can live in this world uh, a good life uh, without having the baggage of religion and therefore of God, uh, why should we go for it? Uh, and I think it really has been uh, the poor performance of religious people, and no one particular religion, is to be blamed. I think overall, some people may have performed worse than others, but the fact remains that it really has been, uh, by and large, the unconvincing and and unimpressive performance of religious people that have caused many people to be put off, and therefore, as a reaction, they have thrown not just water out of the bucket, but the baby as well. Uh, how can we explain that belief is important? Well, I think briefly, what needs to be said is that uh, the world that we are living in, the visible world, cannot be explained to make sense unless we also acknowledge and accept a world that we cannot see. Um, you know, you can't fully comprehend what's going on in this life unless you believe in some important unseen realities. The most significant amongst them is God, the creator, the sustainer. Uh, Otherwise, this life would always remain a puzzle, and somehow uh, atheists and others, agnostics, etc., they they choose to remain puzzled and unclear about uh, the understanding of this world in its totality. So, I mean, if ever an individual would want to know what the reality of this life is in its complete form, uh, it cannot be explained without believing in an unseen God. Uh, Most certainly, as I said, uh, the failure of religious people is quite obvious. I mean, if people can be killed in the name of religion, if people can hate each other because of religion, um, I think it really is a very poor advertisement of religion, and therefore uh, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that there is a reaction, such a strong reaction, that such important natural understanding as that of God could also be could also be rejected, ignored, sacrificed because of that reaction. Because you know the problem, the evil that has been caused by religious people, and mind you, people who are otherwise seemingly practicing people, religious people. Uh, so that is what has caused atheism to get more and more popular. Uh, Obviously, we had this question in the last discussion: how could it be that uh, atheists could turn out to be better human beings than religious people? This obviously is a big mystery, and I do acknowledge that it's a reality. I mean, it can be possible. It is something that we do experience, and therefore, I agree that this question this question needs to be answered. It needs to be answered because, on the one hand, you know, we religious people claim that all morality comes from God. He wants us to be morally upright individuals. He has decided that he is going to reward and punish people on the basis of our moral behavior. And there is another group of people who believe in none of these things. And yet they are morally better people. Oh my goodness. So absolutely, I mean, this question needs to be addressed. I'm not claiming that I'm going to be able to answer it convincingly, but I'll make an attempt. You see, when atheists are behaving morally uprightly, they don't realize they're actually providing an evidence in favor of God. I mean, after all, where has morality come from? Why should anybody bother about morality? Why is it that all humans agree that morality is important? I mean, had it all been an accident, why should there be been why should there have been a common denominator with such a long list of expectations, do's and don'ts, which all agree to? Uh, so, I mean, if atheists are doing really well, I'm really pleased. It kind of supports, confirms my understanding of God. However, the other side has to be answered as well. Why is it that religious people turn out to be less impressive? Here is my answer. You see, honestly, I'm sure that uh, Rabbi Wiseman would also agree, and it's my experience as well, that there are some exceptionally good religious people. Um, I'm not talking about the prophets. I'm talking about people living even today. Uh, if you were to pick somebody from amongst the religious community and compare him or her with somebody belonging to a community of atheists, uh, maybe I'm biased, but I can tell you that if somebody is properly, truly religious, he can be remarkably uh, morally upright. But that still doesn't answer the question. Well, this part of my answer is to show that there's nothing wrong with religion and its message. If religion was to be understood and followed properly, um, we could have had uh, many people who would have made this world a much better place to live in because of their good attitude. The reason many people go wrong, I think, is because understanding and following religion is a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge of understanding, uh, interpretation. Uh, I mean, we believe in a Satan who deceives, who takes us away from the right path. And one of the things that we know from the beginning of the journey of humanity, that our great grandparents, Adam and Eve, they were deceived by Satan. And Satan was asked by the Almighty to bow down before Adam, and he was arrogant. So, what we know is that the very first sin is the sin of arrogance. You start looking down upon others as inferiors. So, I mean, religious people can be arrogant. And I see the kind of differences, kind of hatred that is there uh, within a certain religious community and between religious people belonging to different denominations and traditions. There's a lot of uh, arrogance that is at display. People think they are superior to others, and they fail in the all important moral principle that you ought to be humble all the time is forgotten. There are no excuses. I think because this life is a trial, and in the trial of this life, the Almighty has allowed uh, freedom to all humans, and it all depends on how you make use of that freedom. Uh, that makes you a good person or otherwise. So what I'm trying to say is that if if religious people have turned out to be morally not impressive, it has got nothing to do with the religious teachings that they are following. It has to do with the fact that they have not properly understood and followed religion as best as much as they should have. And this has happened because God has allowed this freedom to everyone. And freedom can be used positively, and it could be misused as well. Uh, the next question that was raised, and another important question was then, if that's the case, is it that no religion is better than bad religion? Well, I think this question has two parts. Uh, If we are talking about no religion for an individual, uh, I, for one, personally would never accept it. Uh, I'm saying it humbly, I'm saying it politely, but honestly, life without a God is not worth living. So, I mean, okay, I mean, people turn out to be horribly bad despite believing in God. It needs to be corrected, but it doesn't really mean that the most important thing in this life, our creator, our sustainer, is to be dumped. No, that's not possible. However, if we are talking about a society uh, which is to run on certain principles, has to run in accordance with a certain ideology, uh, I do believe that uh, unless you have a religious understanding which is correct, which is good, it is better not to have religious principles applied in a society to the people, principles which are not properly understood and are not properly applied. If religious people are biased, if they have these negative feelings about others, which cause them to hate other people simply because of their religious views, others having different views, then most certainly a society should be better run, uh, you know, without a religion. It should probably be better that there be a secular society than a religious society. So what I'm saying is that a religious society is better than a secular society, provided if religion is properly understood and properly practiced, which unfortunately in many cases is not happening. And therefore, this proposal that a non-religious society would function better is what I agree to. And it's because of it's because when there is no religion and therefore no biases, which is being religion being understood and applied incorrectly, people would use their God-given intellect and God-given good nature. Even if they don't acknowledge that it's from God, they will use it judiciously, properly, hopefully, better than uh, people who are religious and are not using it properly. Now, another important question that I think needs to be addressed is probably the most important question, honestly, to me. What would become of an atheist? Uh, if you would ask a typical religious person, uh, the the answer would be unhesitatingly that he's doomed. I mean, come the end of this life and he's gone. You know, the God that I understand from the Quran, and I'm being frank, I'm being humble, I'm telling you the truth. It's coming from my understanding, and people have a right to disagree with me. Is to be understood more through his attributes than the application of his policies, which are mentioned in the form of statements or historical incidents. Uh, God is kind, God is wise, God is fair, God is knowledgeable, knows everything. Uh, what exactly does he want? He wants himself to be acknowledged? Yes. Why? Because he is a reality. And the fact that he has created and he is causing this life to be sustained is a reality. So that truth ought to be acknowledged. But we know from the text that God puts humans into a test, into different tests, and expects them to perform in accordance with their capacities. So honestly, I don't know. I'm not too sure what's going to happen. But I can assure you that the God I know is not going to treat any individual unjustly. He promises that I'm not going to treat anyone unfairly by the slightest of margins. So let me just respond to a response of Burton Russell, who was asked once by somebody, uh, what would you do if all of a sudden you would find yourself in the presence of God, the Almighty Creator? Uh, what is going to be your reaction, your response? And he, being a bright, intelligent man that he was, he said, I will tell God that, look here, you did not leave enough evidences for your presence for me to be able to acknowledge you. In response to Bertrand Russell's statement or response, I would say there are two possibilities. One possibility, I don't know which of the two is going to be applicable in his case or anybody else's case.
Mm-hmm.
One possibility could be that the Almighty is going to show to Bertrand Russell that, look here, look at this movie right in front of you. This movie is your own movie. This is your own life that you can see there. But what you're seeing is not just what you are doing apparently. You can see there very clearly your motives, your intentions. And these are the different stages in your life. When you very clearly came very close to understanding that I was there, but you arrogantly spurned it, rejected it, and therefore you've got no excuse whatsoever. That's one possibility. The other possibility could be that the Almighty would say, well done, Bertrand. You tried your best. I know you had reasons to not believe. God is fair, God is kind, God is wise, and therefore his decision is going to be the best decision, and it's going to be the final decision. I have to say two things more. Um, you know, it's quite popular these days amongst the atheists to say that religion was needed by people uh, of the past. Of the past, they needed religion because they had no answers. I mean, why is there are there earthquakes? Where does the rainfall come from? How do we get babies? Why are we sick, taken ill? And how do we get cured? And the answers to each question was God. Earthquake, God. Rainfall, God. Crops, God. Babies, God. Everything was attributed to a God. We don't need this answer anymore. We know why earthquake takes place. We know how rain falls, and we can explain everything, the birth of babies, etc. So the God that was needed by the ancient man is redundant, is not needed anymore. He's obsolete. So, let's forget about him. And we have a very good, neat explanation of how we came about. There was a big bang that started the creation, the existence of this world universe, and through a process of evolution which has been explained and is getting more and more convincingly explain how life has emerged to be what it is right now. Uh, to this, I would beg to say that whether it's Big Bang or whether it's theory of evolution, etc., quite apart from the fact that these are theories, even if they are taken as realities, true depiction of how things happen, and they're still happening, they're simply answering the question, how? How did this world start? How has it become what it is now? But the more important question, who, is ignored. I mean, imagine that these intelligent people tell us that all is happening on its own. Somebody very rightly remarked that atheists have not been able to run away from the understanding of God. All that they have done is that instead of believing a God separate, independent with all his attributes, they have assigned all the attributes of God to this world. So, it's happening on its own. It's happening very neatly. Our needs are being catered for. And it's amazing. So they can't, they can't run away from acknowledging the fact that it's miraculous. But this miracle is happening on its own. And there is something within this world which is causing things to happen. The last thing that I would want to say is that why do we have to blame atheists? I mean, let them be what they are. Fine. I mean, obviously, I have no problems with that. But some time ago, I came up with uh, a story I imagined to help people understand why I think that not believing in God can be a serious problem, moral problem. The story goes like this, that there was a young boy who was having his education, and he belonged to a wealthy family. Uh, his father enabled him to go through education of the very best quality. He was probably in the high school when his father was kidnapped and he just disappeared, not to be found. But because his family was wealthy, he was able to go through the process of his education, got the best of the degrees that he wanted to go for. And in the meanwhile, his family business was looked after by the managers. But when he became capable enough, he took over the business. And from as a teenager, when he lost his father in his early 30s, when he was the owner of that business and doing extremely well with family, children, he comes to learn about the fact that his father was not dead. He was somewhere, kidnapped with along living with those people who kidnapped him. Uh, what should be the reaction of the son? I don't know. I don't care. I mean, I'm not interested. I'll keep doing my business. I'm having a good life. No, no, that would be a terribly bad, evil decision. It would be morally a horrible decision. It cannot be accepted. My humble request, plea to the atheists is that this life that we are living, with all its blessings, is either from somebody who is far more important and valuable than any of the fathers could be, or it's a fluke happening. If my atheist friends tell me that we did actually try as best and desperately as that son should have tried to look for his lost father, to find out whether he was actually alive or not. They've done their job. And I can assure them from the understanding of the God that I mentioned that they're not to be blamed. But if they're just casually ignoring it and benefiting from all that this world has to offer to them, and they don't even care, then I think there is a moral problem. Thank you very much. That's all that I had to say.
Wow. Uh, okay, I have so many. I have a lot of thoughts. Um. So first of all, I loved what you said uh, about the question that's being, the science answers the question of how, right? And I think it's interesting. Scripture, very often, I think one of the kind of disconnects is the assumption that, okay, so scripture sometimes does talk about how, but that's not really its topic. The topic is not really how. It's a side topic, so to speak, right? It's a side topic, so to speak. And the way that it talks about the how is an entirely different way. I mean, if the Torah or the Quran or the Gospels wanted to be books of science, they could have been books of science, right? But they didn't choose to be books of science. It's not, we're not provided with formulas. We're not provided with the mathematical equations that account for what happens in the physical world. We're really told the purpose of existence, right? We're told why existence is, why existence is. We're told what our relationship is to existence, we're given a sense of what human beings are. I mean, that's really how, what human beings are and what human beings could be or should be. And that's very different. That's very different. And I would also add that, reality is reality, right? And when religion pits itself against a reality, and you could say that let's assume that theories are true, for the moment, right? And to pit yourself against that's also problematic, right? Because God created a world in which the reality is reality, truth is truth. So if science is a way of arriving at a truth, the truth of how, and if religion's a way of arriving at a truth, the truth of why and what, then those two have to be compatible in some sense. They can't be trying to cancel each other out, because you can't cancel out truth, can't cancel out truth. If that made if that I hope that made sense.
All right. Absolutely, absolutely. I quite agree with you. Uh, this is what I think. You know, by answering the question, how, you think you've answered all other questions? You've not.
Right,
Why and who still remains? I agree with you. Absolutely.
right, right. And I think the miraculous. I had a science teacher. Uh, I was teaching in a school, and we had a religious science teacher. And I asked him, I said to him, I said, what makes your teaching, do you think, different than if an atheist were teaching science? And he said, my goal is to instill awe. That was that I said, my goal is to instill awe, right? That to use the science, to use the science as a means of developing awe for the creator, and to acknowledge the miracles within the creation, and to understand that, this is in itself a miraculous thing. The fact that you can take, all the physical laws, basically everything, almost anything you can imagine that goes on in the physical world, you could probably, if your handwriting was small enough, you could fit on one piece of paper, right? In terms of the mathematics of it, you could fit on one piece of paper. And that in itself is a remarkable miracle. Um, and it is when it comes to the morality issue. Um, I'm sitting in this library. I'm sitting in a library of religious books, and I'm thinking about which ones get the most use. As I'm sitting here, I'm kind of looking and I'm thinking, behind me is all the legal stuff. Okay, the legal stuff is all behind me. These are all codes and things like that. The legal stuff is all behind me. And kind of the ethical section is over there. And I'm gonna guess that the ethical section has gotten very little traffic. Okay. There's relatively less traffic going on over on that side and a lot more traffic going on this side. And I'm not sure how or why that happened. I think people have, if you ask people, about the laws of rituals and things like that, they can give you these very complex answers and so on. If you ask them, on the other hand, about the basics of integrity in business and in kind of normal human relations, I don't I don't think they could wax I don't think they'd really have so much to say. And I don't know how that happened exactly. Um but I sus but somehow or another that's kind of how it played out. And I don't know what the forces are that kind of built that, but I see that across the board. I see that across the board that the that there's not an emphasis on behavior. There's not an emphasis on character. Um, I mean, I mean, uh, rarely do you hear, people seriously sitting down to study how to improve your character. I mean, which is like a big part. It's a big part of religion. It's a huge thing.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
And uh, how many groups do you know, you know, uh, where how many, halakas do you know where people sit down and say, okay, we're gonna sit here, we're gonna like improve our character. That's our mission, right? You know, you don't see it very often. I'm not sure why that is. Um, but it does create the impression. And then even more complicated is that people have a natural conscience, right? I really believe that, and I think that is a God-given thing, is that natural conscience. And sometimes religion interferes with the natural conscience, right? Which is exactly the opposite of what should happen, right? That it's, your natural conscience says, my natural conscience says that all human beings have, that the blood of all human beings, runs red, um, and that all human beings deserve dignity and respect because they all look the same to me. I mean, honestly, when I look at faces, one face is like another face. Each one is distinct, but like they're human faces. I recognize them as human faces, right? And I recognize their needs as human needs and everything else. But religion will tell me, no, 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 no. It says these people are worthy and those people are not worthy. And so I'm literally asked to fight my conscience, you know, and that's it. And in that sense, when I said no religion, and that's kind of what I meant, is too often religion kind of interferes with our sense of of conscience, and that's a sad thing. It shouldn't, right? And you're quite right. I mean, that's a fault in the way that we do religion. If that's happening, it means that we're doing something wrong. Something not right in the way that we're teaching. Something's not right in the way that we're learning, and the way that we're, you know, uh, the way that we're kind of taking our religion into action. Literally, I'm looking at a book. I have to tell you, the name of the book is Avat Chesed, which means um, the love of kindness. And I can tell from here that the book has never been opened. It's like just I'm just saying the actual title is The Love of Kindness, and it has literally never been opened. I
That's
think the
true.
plastic is still on it. So
You've mentioned something very, very relevant and important. Uh, and probably, while you were mentioning it, it came to my mind that could it be that a religious person is quite often so overwhelmingly, you know, involved in, drowned in the information of legal enactments, expectations, that the moral expectations, the conscience takes a back seat, as you really rightly pointed out, that sometimes there seems to be a clear conflict. And because somehow the purely religious, although obviously morality is a very important part of religion, but somehow, those legal enactments, those fatwa, sharia, that
right.
the law, that's given more importance, uh, not realizing that by far the most important part of religion is morality. This quite often, this conflict, apparent conflict, I agree, there can be no real conflict. It's a problem of our understanding. And I think that's where more and more research within religious scholarship should continue to be able to overcome the apparent conflicts between what is morally upright and what is also legally desirable and expected. That should go on. And I'm sure that the right understanding and research would lead us to believe that all religious enactments, laws, fatwa, uh, Sharia based understanding is nothing but ethically sound and acceptable. Uh, but unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way. And the end result is that many religious people, they're more inclined to follow what they start believing that is their the demand of their religion. I think the decision of every religious person should be, because quite often we do find ourselves, you know, in a situation which is a dilemma. We are at crossroads. We should always decide in favor of what is morally and ethically desirable. In other words, we should always follow the voice of our conscience, even if at times it may apparently seem to be conflicting with the religious verdict that we are getting. I think that that's the solution.
And religious verdicts, I think you know, that I saw somebody recently who wrote an article. Um, I think it was something like religion and the friendly decider. And it was talking about, you know, who makes the decisions, and very often, very often the rulings and so on depend so heavily on the experience of the person who's deciding, right? Because there are lots of different texts and lots of different ways of looking at things. And, it would be nice to see, decisions that are more sensitive, that are more sensitive to the cultivation of character. Um, and and maybe, God's name would get a little bit better, get a little bit better advertisement in this world. Um, I, you know, I it's I really do believe, like you do, that it's important for people to give it a chance. and to really explore for yourself. And that's also another area of, I think, religious education, is to help people to do that, to realize different people have to do it different ways. You know, um, I had a friend who was an astronomer. He became a rabbi, but he started out as a physicist and astronomer. And I once asked him, like, what was the relation between the two? And he looked at me like I was crazy. He looked at me like I was a madman. Like, what kind of question is that? Well, I mean, being an astronomer and a physicist, that's, so different from being a rabbi. He said, no, it's exactly the same. He says, I'm still a physicist and I'm still an astronomer and I'm also a rabbi. He says, but one brought me to the other. At because he, looked at the cosmos and and he felt that sense of awe and he wanted to know, okay, so now I understand how the Big Bang happened. Now I want to know why, right? Now I want to understand what the purpose of this creation is. And he started to explore it. And some people are going to, and for some people, it's all about the book, right? For some people, it's the book. Some people, they just dive into the scripture and they find God there. But not everybody's going to find God in the scriptures. People are going to find God in the stories of other people, and some people are going to find God. I think that we have to realize that God is encountered in multiple ways, and while while the the books are the ultimate guide to that experience, right? And they're what help us to understand the experience. The experience is not limited to the books.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. So over to Dr. Lalit.
yeah, I'm done ranting. I was
Yeah,
going to.
you are muted.
You're muted.
Wow, that was amazing. Just like last week with Rabbi Wiseman and all of the wisdom that you shared as well on this topic. Thank you, Dr. Zahir. You made some really amazingly powerful points. Um, and yeah, I completely agree with everything you said, really. I that's how I see it as well. I um I just think it's a huge shame that you know, to not have faith because of the actions of some people who do, bad things in the name of religion. Um, I think it's a shame because I believe that religion and faith offers us the ability to, as human beings, to fulfill our potential to our creator. And as a human being, I think when we don't have that faith in a creator or in an understanding that's higher than our own understanding, then we don't have access, or we don't perceive our access to that part of us that cannot be broken, that part of us which always gets up when we fall, which finds the strength to stand back up again and to keep going and to persevere in doing good deeds for the sake of just doing them, and I think the atheists that call themselves atheists who do feel like they have access to that, I would argue that actually they're probably not atheists. They just don't they don't they don't associate themselves as in a label, or with a religion that or with a god that you could argue is actually, they've got a good point, because instead they attach themselves to the inner goodness within ourselves, which one could argue is our inner righteousness, which is, are the attributes of our creator that all human beings have access to, that all human beings are part of. But then there might be atheists who actually, are atheists because, like you said, if they've been exposed to a higher truth, but then willingly turned away from it, because instead they want to choose, you know, to enjoy the, you know, worldly benefits of, you know, selfish pursuits, and because of arrogance, you know, ego, lust, you know, greed and fame and all that type of thing. That's I think that's a shame. But even then, there are times in each of our lives where I love the image of a boat in the ocean, and you're on a boat in the ocean, and you know there's a storm, and there's a parable like this in the Quran that you're in, you know, you're in the sea, and you know everything forsakes you. So all these things that you put your trust in, they leave you, and you're exposed and bare, and you call out. That's when, you know, even atheists who don't believe, then we all have moments like that where we call out to our creator and acknowledge, just like Pharaoh did in the sea when, you know, at the very end, and he acknowledged that there was a creator, and that, you know, he finally believed in the, you know, acknowledged that there was a creator, and God said to him, now you believe. So it's sometimes we need to get to that part of, you know, complete brokenness where we're completely helpless, and we cry out from within to our creator. And then, you know, and then he helps us, and then we forget again. And this is like human nature. And I think that's why religion plays a great part in helping us, prevents us, if we do it properly, the rituals and the laws, and they might be different for different religions, but they're supposed to help us to remember, not to forget, if you know what I mean. So to remember that, like being on that boat in that ocean at all times, that's how I see it, is that to remember that everything else is a delusion. Nothing is real except for our creator. There is nothing other than, you know, the Lord of the worlds, and actually to not say that anything we can accomplish is because of ourselves. It's not just because of our efforts. It's not just because we are, you know, it's not because just we are great or we are this and I deserve this, but actually to acknowledge all success to our creator, and to have access to that, and to do that brings us an immense amount of peace. And this is why I think that it's a shame for atheists not to, you know, acknowledge that there is a creator, because I don't know, do they? I want to, maybe we'll talk about this. It would be great to talk to some atheists and, you know, to explore, are they able to have access to that true inner peace where you completely surrender to something, or, you know, or an understanding that's higher than your own? And I personally believe that we can only achieve that inner peace if we surrender and submit to our higher will. But I don't know, it'd be interesting to explore that maybe in one of our sessions. But thank you so much for the amazing points that you've made. And actually, I agree with everything you said, Dr. Zahir. It's such a shame that I think within religions, there, you know, where we go wrong sometimes is when we believe that our religion is better than someone else's religion, or we think that, you know, when ego gets in the way, and it's like you said, the first sin, and it ends up causing complete chaos, and it's a shame that it then puts other people off believing. So may we all be guided to truth and wisdom, and to emulate the, you know, the ways of peace, and to the best of our potentials. Amen. God bless you both. Have you got any more questions, Rabbi Wiseman?
Nope, I got all my questions. All my questions are answered. Everything.
That was amazing. I really enjoyed these sessions. It was so great. So yeah. Okay. Peace be with you. God bless you both.
Thank you very much. Thank you. See you again.
Take care. Bye.